Through Wilkow.
Yeah, when I get out of here this Sunday, I'm going to be going to see All That Remains and interviewing Phil Labonte, strong libertarian, lead singer of All That Remains for CRTV. We're going to be doing a sit-down on the stage at the Starland Ballroom, and it's going to be an episode next week. It's going to be great. All right, joining us on the program right now, speaking of libertarians, is Mark Holden. He is the Vice President, General Counsel, and Corporate Secretary of Koch Industries. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Andrew. How are you?
I know you're in an airport and we only got a few minutes anyway. We're going to talk about prison reform. You know, a lot of people, look, Kim Kardashian is not my favorite figure. I'd prefer to be able to handle things like prison reform without going to reality stars. But, you know, it's amazing. Democrats like to look at the Koch brothers, libertarians, and limited government activists and call everyone they don't like Nazis, except when it comes to constitutional prison reform. I thought we were on the same page.
I agree. I think that you're exactly right, Andrew. If we followed the Constitution, we'd be in a much better place, particularly the Bill of Rights, which, as you know, with the 10 amendments, 4 of them deal with criminal justice issues, whether it's the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th Amendments. And that was a warning our founding fathers were sending to us that the biggest overreach, the greatest overreach we were going to see in our society by government, by the powerful government, was going to come through the criminal justice system. Our founding fathers had seen that happen in their countries, and that was a warning. And we should have heeded that warning. We don't always heed that warning, but I do think we're getting back to a better place. And if we could have fundamental principles like the Bill of Rights that we followed, as well as just a much more thoughtful approach to crime and punishment, letting punishment fit the crime. And then with prison reform, which we were talking about now, it should be about rehabilitation and reformation, the whole idea being that we don't want people coming out of prison worse than they went in. And 95% of the people in prison are coming out. So we want them better. We want them educated. We want them skilled. We want them less violent, less troubled. So when they come out, they're productive members of society. That keeps law enforcement safer, keeps families together, keeps communities safer, and saves a lot of money. And we've seen this as happen in many red states like Texas. Texas in the last 10 years, as you probably know, they have closed 8 prisons. They've saved over $4 billion in taxpayer money in the process. And here's the best part of it. They have crime rates that they haven't seen this low since the mid-1960s. So this works, and we should keep employing it and not let the government overreach continue.
Well, there's a difference between criminal behavior and things that are criminalized. And
Yep.
Mike Lee was in studio with me this week, and we talked about the hardest place to be, I think, politically, is to assert somebody else's rights that you don't plan to exercise. So, for example, I've never smoked marijuana. I don't plan on smoking marijuana. It's just not my thing. I don't think, however, the federal government should be passing laws that they're not empowered to pass, and then have a generation of people go to jail for things that are not actually criminal. Again, there's a difference between breaking the law and doing things that we all agree are criminal. And nonviolent drug offenders who are suffering under the weight of laws that never should have been passed in the first place have had their lives ruined.
No, you're exactly right. And you've seen the overreach of the war on drugs. And sadly, drugs won the war on drugs, and they'll continue to win the war on drugs because we're not fighting the right issues. But as you probably know, we don't know how many federal criminal laws we have in this country. There's an estimate that it's somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 federal criminal laws, and there's an estimate that there's maybe 300,000 or so federal criminal regulations. We just don't know, and that just tells you how out of control it's become. And the government trying to really take control without a lot of thought, in my opinion, into every aspect of our society. So you're right. I mean, people who smoke marijuana, I'm not a drug user, never have been, but they shouldn't have their lives ruined because of it. I mean, we know from the 1920s prohibition doesn't work. We also know that the research shows that there are medical uses and therapeutic uses for marijuana. So there's some good things there, and we should just probably let people figure that out instead of criminalizing it and making it illegal and turning it into such an enterprise, a cartel with the cartels and around the world now for the last 30 or 40 years. And so if the government would just kind of stick to its core functions, and really one of them is keeping people safe. And what keeps people safe? Well, a lot of different things. But if you have common sense criminal justice system that makes communities safer, that gives real second chances, and we don't lock people up for long periods of time or give them criminal records over things that really don't matter when no one has been hurt or harmed.
Yeah, and that's, again, as a conservative, I call myself a conservatarian, right? On many issues, I'm a conservative. On many, I'm also a libertarian. And I understand old school thinking, the war on drugs, the silent majority, and all that stuff. It's one thing if you've never faced it before. It's another thing to not learn the lesson. And I get that our modern era drug laws come from the opium scare in Southeast Asia. But again, when you look at things, when you look at what the government has done, if it hasn't worked, they should stop doing it.
Right. No, I agree. Well, it hasn't worked. We've got 30 or 40 years of history now with the war on drugs, and illegal drug usage is at a much higher use than it ever has been, both the absolute number and the rate of usage. So it's not working. And what we need to do is focus on behavior and if there is a criminal element involved with the drug cartels, which there is, a violent criminal element involved, treat that as a criminal issue. If it's a mental health issue or a public health issue like addiction, treat them as such. Don't lock everybody up. We learned from the 1980s and 90s that long mandatory minimum sentences for people who are low-level nonviolent offenders didn't work, doesn't work, burdens them for life with a criminal record, which keeps them from being able to work in certain occupations, to have housing, to get loans. So really the government should look, especially the federal government, should look at what's happening in the states and the way they've reformed their criminal justice systems and reduce crime rates, reduce incarceration rates, and are reducing recidivism rates so people aren't coming back to prison. And that's the goal of the federal bill, the First Step Act, which passed the House in a huge bipartisan vote, including the Freedom Caucus. Pretty much, I think every member of the Freedom Caucus in the House voted in favor of it. It's about rehabilitation.
It's about freedom. Look,
it's about freedom.
Again, I'm going to run out of time here, but we don't have to exercise the liberty to respect the freedom. It's like the way I look at same-sex marriage. I don't see the word marriage in the Constitution. I'm a constitutionalist. Therefore, I don't see the government's business being there. And I say that as in that vein, myself being a social conservative.
Yeah, no, I agree. If we went back to what the Constitution, our founding documents were all about, most of everything was supposed to be left to the state.
Yeah. And I got to leave it there, sir. I got to leave it.
There's a reason for that. Thank you.
I know you got to get your ride in the airport. We'll talk to you next time. Mark Holden, Senior Vice President, General Counsel, and Corporate Secretary of Koch Industries. See, libertarians backing prison reform. Koch brothers ain't so bad. Hannity's up next. We're right, they're wrong. It's the end of the story. The arguments on this radio program cannot be broken. Sirius XM Patriot.